Welcome to Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar here on STL Sports Central. All content here provided by DraftKings. The crown is yours. The legend Mike Claiborne joins me, Stefan Caray, here on a wonderful Monday afternoon. Chicago, that toddling town, but as the title suggests, it has not been a fun month for the Cardinals. 1-7 in their last 8 games. Starting pitching has struggled, and really with all the dramatics going on in Milwaukee, you would have liked a better series outcome yesterday. But a big opportunity against the White Sox to get back on track.
Yeah, this is a team you have to come in and beat. You can't take 2 out of 3. You need to win all 3. But also, when you think about the Milwaukee series, with the exception of the first game where they were shut out, they were in virtually every game, including winning one. So they're not that far away. But now we're at that point in the season. Now the Flag Day is behind us. We really start to pay attention to the trends and what's going on. And I think as I look at Flag Day, and my assessment is this: you need more pitching. You need a right-handed bat, especially something off the bench. And I think if you do that, you really put yourself in legitimate contention. This team is probably playing with a 24, 25-man roster. You need all 26 these days. And until you fix that, you're going to find yourself having those highs and lows as far as winning and losing streaks are concerned.
Well, around the baseball world, your estimation about the importance of Flag Day was felt yesterday. First major trade of the season. Rafael Devers goes over to the San Francisco Giants, a team that I think they're really going for it. They trust their ability to go out and beat the Dodgers, beat the Padres, the Diamondbacks. And it just proves your point that Flag Day is a point of demarcation in the season. Now, if you're the Cardinals, what do? Do you buy? Do you sell? Jury's still out on that one, but as it sits right now, 2 games above 500, you're tied for third place with the Reds. You're 7 games back of first in the NL Central.
It's a good question. But first of all, what did you think of that trade yesterday?
It was really surprising. I thought the Red Sox would have gotten a whole lot more back out of that. I thought they would have gotten more offense. James Tibbs at high A, not a player that has really proven himself at Double A, which is really a proving ground in the minor leagues. Then you get Kyle Harrison, who's a talented left-handed pitcher. They traded away Quinn Priester, though. They traded away some of their starting pitching assets to make room for some other guys. And I was surprised to see a bat that has been one of the best offensive contributors for the Red Sox be given up. Now, the Giants taking on the remainder of his contract, I think, was the biggest deal for the Red Sox. They wanted a guy that was going to help develop their young stars, to be flexible, to be malleable. And that just wasn't what Rafael Devers was after they asked him to take off the third baseman's glove and put on a first base mitt. It's just very, very surprising. And I'm sure it's going to be a very, very animated and exciting trade deadline coming up, because now there are other teams that need to respond to that.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by it. I was surprised by what both teams got in return. I think maybe the Devers thing was more of a clubhouse chemistry, toxicity situation, where when guys say, I'm not going to do something in direct response to the manager and the ownership and everyone else, that sends the wrong message, where the players run it. And they do to a point. But I just felt like they had to get him out of there. I just didn't see that working, because especially in a market where the media is very aggressive and they're going to keep stirring that pot. Now, moving him to San Francisco, I don't know. I mean, obviously San Francisco didn't think the Jordan Hicks signing was a good one because they wanted to get rid of him. And he's been nothing but bad since he's been there. But overall, I think, man, this is one of those deals where the jury is going to be out for some time. Maybe San Francisco is a little bit ahead because Devers is a proven player. But if you're Boston, what are you saying to your fans? We've given Bogarts, Betts, and now this guy. And since they won the World Series, how many times have they been over 500?
That's a great question. I mean, maybe once, maybe twice. And if they were over 500, it's got to be by 3 or 4 games, not by 10 or 11.
And so I just don't know if this is – I would not be surprised if there are fans in Boston that will be having to sell the team signs out, because they can't get it right.
I agree.
And it's not a manager. It's not a general manager, because we've had different in those positions, it's been one owner.
It's a very, very interesting conversation. And where is Devers going to play in San Francisco? You got rid of Lamont Wade to bring in Dominic Smith about a week and a half ago. Smith has hit well since joining the Giants. Where is he going to play? You have Matt Chapman. You have Casey Schmidt at third base. That position is filled. So now Devers, who wouldn't play first base for the Red Sox, are they going to ask him to do that for the Giants? It's all a very convoluted situation, and one that I'm sure the baseball world will be monitoring very closely. But it is our job to talk about the Cardinals today. And as it stands, 2 games above 500, just not playing their sharpest brand of baseball. Yesterday, frustrating outcome. Almost preferable if they had gotten blown out. They were so close. They had the pieces to tie that game, to maybe even take the lead in the ninth, and just couldn't quite execute. The bottom of the order, 7 through 9. And lately with Lars Nootbaar leading off, you have 4 guys that have been not necessarily automatic outs, but getting out more often than not.
Yeah, you're playing a 7-inning game with the outs that you're giving up. And if everybody knows you're playing 7 innings, then that's a different story. But, the way it's working out now with the fact you're not getting any productivity, which if you go back to, 3 weeks ago, that was the best part of your lineup, the bottom of the order, and what they were doing. And obviously taking it back to the top of Lars. They're all lost right now for different reasons. So do you ride this storm out? Because it's not like you have help on the way. We have nothing in the minor leagues that's going to come in and change the situation. So you can juggle some people lineup-wise as far as spots in the order, or you just ride it out and just see what happens. And maybe the White Sox will be a good quick fix. I don't know. I get the feeling that a team like the White Sox, they're going to say at some point, we've had enough of being a doormat, and we're going to play some teams tougher and smarter. But maybe they don't have enough of that talent either. But I just don't know what options you really have other than trying to ride this storm out, because they're not going to be bad the whole year.
No, they won't. And the White Sox are a far cry from who they were last year. A team that has 23 wins. They've played better baseball. They have younger, exciting prospects. And we'll dive into them here in just a moment. A quick reminder that Cards Central 365 is powered by Graybar, your distributor for electrical and data comm needs. Claibs, Cardinals starting pitching has struggled mightily. You look at the numbers in this 1-7 slide. They carry an NL worst ERA, 6.21. Nobody has been sharp with the exception of Sonny Gray. And you're happy to get him and Fetty, who have been probably your 2 most consistent starters this year, just looking at ERA as the main statistic on that point, against a team like the White Sox, because they give you your best chance to win. And if you can sweep this series, then you can kind of forget a little bit more about that series against Milwaukee. Oh, and by the way, the Brewers are going to face off against the Cubs at the friendly confines right down the road, and those 2 can beat up on each other. Big window of opportunity for the Cubs.
There's no doubt. And now the schedule is going to be fun. When you think about what we're going to deal with the White Sox, and then you come home and you have Cincinnati and Chicago, and then you go back on the road, you'll have Cleveland, but you'll go back in the division with Pittsburgh and the Cubs again. This is where you have to do some damage. The schedule is allowing that. So you have to take advantage of this situation. And I'm not saying we start scoreboard watching yet, but you have to pick up. I think you have to pick up 2 games a week for the next couple of weeks in the standings. You can't do it overnight. You're going to lose a game here and there. But when you look at these next 3 games, you have a chance to gain ground on 2 teams. And you have to take advantage of it. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. And you talk about the pitching. Sonny's been good. Maybe didn't get the run support. The other guys have been okay. They kept you in games. We have a lot of quality starts here recently. And you just have to find some ways to create more runs. And they were doing that for a while, but they've kind of slacked off a little bit. And you touched on the bottom of the order. So while I'm patient and I have no choice in this matter, I think I have to look for small things in order for this team to start to turn it around. And they can. I'm not concerned. Not concerned.
Well, you're not halfway through the season yet, and I think the Cardinals have a good opportunity here against the White Sox, who are losers of 5 in a row. They're 4-6 in their last 10, and they're the White Sox. They're a team that you have a good chance of beating if you play your brand of baseball. But the Cardinals offensively, to your point, 37 runs in their last 10 games, 56 total runs in the month of June. So they're averaging right about 3 runs per game. And a quality start, by its definition, is 6 innings of 3 or less earned runs. So you can get a quality start. Doesn't mean your offense is giving you much run support. And that's sort of been the key here for the Cardinals of late. They haven't been scoring. You've had some guys out of the lineup. Hopefully the insertion and emergence of Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker will help to spark things for them a little bit in the Windy City.
You mentioned quality starts as far as the run situation. We're getting quality starts and we're giving the opposition quality starts as well. And somehow you have to turn that around. But yeah, it starts tomorrow. And, I think it's important for them to score early. In teams like the White Sox, you take the spirit from them early to the point where they say, well, here we go again, compared to them being in the game in the 6th inning, the 7th inning. Then all of a sudden, a blue pit or something takes place that gives them an advantage, and all of a sudden you're playing catch up. And while the team has played well, catch up wise, Stefan, I don't have the number in front of me, but I think it's a pretty healthy number to say that the Cardinals have had the tying or winning run at the plate in the 9th inning a whole lot of times. They're in a lot of ball games, and so what they have to do now is, when you do have that situation, produce more, but it would be more helpful if you had enough runs well before the 9th inning.
I agree. And yesterday, what we saw, I think, was for the first time, you really question the experience of Jordan Walker, Victor Scott, Mason Wynn up against a guy that was throwing 100 miles an hour and a nasty knuckle curve, runners on first and second, the inability to move those runners over. That's going to happen. That's going to happen for these young guys and is a valuable experience for them to learn, because you want them to be sort of these cornerstones of your franchise. Sometimes they're going to fail. And you hated that it happened in that situation with all the pomp and the circumstance of that game, but they'll be better for it, I think, over the next few seasons.
Yeah, I think you learn from those situations. I know some people, they maybe try too hard. As you touched on, guys throwing that hard, you think you have to swing that hard in order to catch up to it when you really don't. And it's a trial by error in that situation, and they'll learn from it. I mean, they're young guys, but they're reasonably seasoned. That's the other thing. These guys are a little older than you think. They played in a few more games than you thought, and it's still a learning process, but it's one that I think they can overcome before this year is over.
The downside is you're pretty far back in the division, but you're not far back at all in the wild card, 2.5 games back. And that might be the area that the Cardinals need to hone in on, focus more on those teams rather than the Cubs, and just control their own destiny. The opportunity of getting to play within your division really for the first time consistently this season is beneficial to the Cardinals. You're not relying on having to win and the Cubs to be beaten by another team, or the Brewers to be beaten by another team. Now you get the chance to play them head to head and show what you're made of. And this is a very fortuitous day for St. Louis because it's an off day. They haven't had very many of those this month. They can reset, refresh ahead of a really important series for the team in the long run. And I think that really it comes at a very, very important time.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you on the schedule and the standings, because you think about this. The Cardinals have played a lot of interleague games. They really haven't gotten into the meat of their division. So when I look at them being 7 games out, that's an easy makeup for them, to me, because you're going to face these teams that are in front of you a lot more. And those teams in front of you are going to face other teams within the division a lot more. So there's always a day where you can gain ground compared to, them being out of the division and you being out of the division. So while 7 sounds like a lot, I've seen them make that up. Well, not this team. I've seen teams make that up fairly quick, especially when they start playing within the division.
Yeah, basically what you're saying is they control their own destiny because they have those division opponents, which is a luxury that they didn't have at the beginning of the season. And now the schedule's starting to tighten up against the Cubs, who are playing 6 or 7 series in a row against contending teams or teams above 500. This is a big window for the Cardinals to make up some ground and to forget about the struggles of the month of June. The June swoon, the May was great, but now you got to find a way to start winning again. And this is, I think, if you look at any stretch of the season, you can either make or break how you look at what the Cardinals did over the next 3.5 weeks.
Yeah, I think you have to make some real good decisions between now and the All-Star break. I think that's the next measure mark. Where are you at the All-Star break? I think they're going to be in good shape considering the schedule and what I've seen from certain players. I don't think this team is burnt up pitching-wise. I do think they need more. You need a guy that can come in and hold the line. And I'm really looking more at the bullpen. Would I like to have another lights-out starter? Well, who wouldn't? They just aren't as available. And I don't know what that price is right now. When you look at the Cardinals, if they're going to do that, they're probably going to have to take payroll off somebody's hands. And for a team that decided they weren't going to invest in payroll, that would be against what they said at the beginning of the year. So I'll fast forward to you. You get to the All-Star break, and you think you're in it. At what point does the power chain transition between what Mo set out to do compared to what Heim is intending to do with regard to what this roster looks like? So I'm thinking they have to work in concert here to make sure that they're on the same page and they can go forward knowing that, okay, we're going to make this deal because it's going to help us now. It's going to help you in the future. Now, maybe it's a long-term contract that you're looking at because you have some people that are going to come off the payroll this year. Or is this a rental? If it's a rental, it's going to cost you more. If it's long-term, then you're talking about prospects and maybe somebody on your roster, and I don't know who that player would be. I don't know how many attractive players the Cardinals have that teams would like to gobble up, only because the fact that they haven't maybe done as good of a job, but maybe the plus is you don't have to pay them a lot because most of the guys on this roster are under control.
I think club control is the most important thing at this point in time, unless you're really willing to go out and get a player that you have for a year, but then you've got to get rid of some players in the farm system. And then you're going against what Chaim Bloom's looking to do, which isn't necessarily rebuild, but to develop some of the young talent and not necessarily be one of those teams that breaks out the checkbook for every potential free agent. It's
well, here's
really
the thing.
situation.
Here's what I would say to that. Maybe there's people in the organization alleged talent that maybe he doesn't deem as really as talented as the previous regime thought. So maybe you might want to clean the deck with some of those players too and move them out of the organization and find somebody that's more compatible to your thought process.
I think that's a really good point. But the difficult aspect of that is trying to find a trade partner that wants those specific players for the specific player that you want. And oftentimes those two bits of communication don't work in concert. And we'll see who the Cardinals end up getting, if anyone at all. My question is what is the value of a rental starting pitcher, depending on who it is, over having a guy like Michael McGreevy in the rotation, or over having someone that is within the organization that you don't need to pay millions of dollars or take the contract or lose some of your farm hands that you're expecting to be part of the team in the near future?
You know, I think I'm probably looking more in the bullpen than starters. I want another guy who can close, who has that experience. I want another guy who's a middle inning guy or be in that setup role. I'm not comfortable with certain people right now. So I would look for somebody with a tad more experience, but certainly someone who can close, because I want to make sure I have a legitimate closer every day. You know, when you look at Helsley, you pitch him 2 out of 3 days, but what if I have a chance to win the third game of a series and he's unavailable? I need a guy who can come in and do that. Now, maybe there's some guys on this team that can do it. I just haven't seen it. And if they do say, well, we think such and such can do it, I'll probably have a reason on why he can't because of what I've seen in the past.
Well, you don't have very many swing and miss relievers on this rotation or this bullpen. You got to guess in there. But you look at a guy like Andre Granillo, who had great strikeout numbers in the minor leagues. He had a great first showing. What is he going to be? What is Gordon Graceffa going to be? We will have to see, but you're not going to put him in a high leverage situation immediately and baptize him by fire, especially in a stretch where you've gone 1-7 in your last 8 games.
Yeah, there's a time and place for it. There's no question about that. But I think, and you touched on two guys who I think you have to give a longer look at. And while I may not throw them in the fire right now, I want them close to it to have an understanding of what that's all about. And Bernio has had some closing experience in the minors. And obviously that's a little different than what the big leagues would offer. But I need somebody who has that mentality, has that understanding of what it's like to get the final 3 outs of a ball game.
I agree. That's always the position I saw him in Springfield, and he was the guy that shut it down. But a reminder that baseball season is officially underway, and it's time to step up to the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings Pick 6 as your fastball right down the middle. It's the easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports. For new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Just about finished here on Card Central 365. A quick preview of the White Sox and Cardinals series at Rate Field, which is an underrated ballpark. Joe Roderick, who does amazing work with us here on STL Sports Central, will be at 2 of the games. So I know he is going to enjoy a campfire milkshake, maybe 2, maybe 3. Who knows where it goes from there. Tuesday's Matthew Liberatore, who's had some struggles, could be a big opportunity for him to bounce back against Shane Smith. Sonny Gray versus Sean Burke in game 2. And Eric Fetty versus Adrian Hauser. You have 2 guys with the White Sox that have sub-3 ERAs. They've pitched well, and you can't take this team lightly. Almost feels like another trap series for the Cardinals, if you could even call it that, considering the struggles of the month of June.
No, I think it is. I think you touched it. You hit the nail on the head. I think this is a trap series, especially because of the way you've been playing. And you touched on something earlier about the fact that this is a better team than the record may indicate. You know, they have good pitching. They just don't hit enough. But it doesn't take much for a team like Chicago to hit and the opposition not respond. So, yeah, I'm very cautious and conscious of what's going on with this series against the White Sox. That's why I said earlier, you got to score first and score early.
My final question here before we head off and let you enjoy the rest of your off day and maybe take a nice little walk with my dad, who needs the steps more than just about anyone. What do you think about the leadoff spot? Yesterday, it was Brendan Donovan. He had 2 hits, looked very comfortable despite not feeling 100% with that toe. How do they remedy this? How do they assess it? Do you keep giving Nootbaar shots up there, or do you stick with your best hitter on the team?
I probably go with Wynn in the leadoff spot. Oh, you know, I'll tell you a guy who I'd run out there. I know he isn't hitting the ball well either. I throw Victor Scott in there a couple times just to make him focus more, where he's got a free runway in front of him, where if he gets on, it's easier to steal second and see what he can do, because he's always hit leadoff virtually everywhere he's ever played. And again, I know he's not hitting as well as he would like to, but just to put him in a different situation, maybe one that he's more comfortable with. It's almost like when a guy's slumping, you call a hit and run, make him bear down a little bit more. So maybe I try that for a game or 2, because Nootbaar isn't the answer right now. And I don't know if he is the answer, period, to be honest with you. I think he's probably more of a 7 hitter. You know, he draws a lot of walks. I get that. But he's pulling off the pitches so much that he's jumping at the ball. He's a pitching coach's dream on how to fix someone, because he's doing everything wrong. Now, how he gets back on track, I don't know. Maybe you just don't have him in the cage one day. Just stay away, you know, because he's developing, he's refining bad habits. So maybe he steps away for a little bit and tries to work through it that way and just be more focused on the things that he needs to do and maybe simplify it. So that's just me. I mean, maybe he's doing all those things. I don't know. But I wouldn't have him in the leadoff spot, because I think that spot right now is so critical. And while his name is attached to it, if he's not producing, he puts more pressure on himself.
And I think if you move him down to a bottom part of the Cardinals order that isn't instilling much fear in their opponents, at least in the month of June, it changes things a little bit. You look at Lars Nootbaar as a more difficult at bat, a more difficult out than that of Victor Scott, than that of Jordan Walker, than that of Pedro Pajes right now. And maybe that's what gets him going. But I agree with your point completely. If the logic was we need a guy that can get on base and steal, well, Lars Nootbaar doesn't exactly fit that profile. And Mason Wynn, yes, he hasn't been stealing much either. So you get some speed with Victor Scott, but what you get more than anything, even if he's going to get out 50% of the time or more, is chaos. And that's something that I think he brings to the table that we aren't seeing as much here in 2025 as in the small sample size of 2024 early in the year.
I agree wholeheartedly. And we'll see what happens come tomorrow and what direction they go. But, when you're 1-7, you might as well try anything and everything.
They look to bounce back against the Chicago White Sox at Wright Field. Mike Claiborne will be involved with the radio broadcast. Thank you so much again for being with us here on Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Stefan Caray signing off. Cardinals looking to get back on track. 2 games above 500.